In this podcast, we continue unpacking Flourishing, the ultimate guide to working on your business. And this time, what we do is we're going to look at what are the primary metaphors undergirding or underlying this concept of flourishing and businesses flourishing. The metaphor of the gardener and the trellis, cultivating growth, the concept of cultivation as a way to think about governance and not just mechanics or mechanical thinking around governance and governing in business. And where this thinking originates is many years ago in wondering and processing and working with the concepts of governance, I thought it's got to be more than just about the systems and the structures. It's got to be more than just what we do and what we put in place to govern. It's about actually what the governance is for. And so what does flourishing mean? Flourishing means to grow or develop in a healthy or vigorous way, especially as the result of a particularly congenial environment. What governance is about essentially, it's about the container and not the water in between or inside it. Governance helps us contain what needs to be cultivated. And that's the concept I want to unpack in this podcast. It's leading as gardening. Great businesses are grown. They're not just built. They're not just constructed. The leader is the gardener, not the mechanic. The trellis, the things we do put in place, because certainly there are structures and systems, and a lot of governance does have to do with appropriate structures and systems that we put in place at the right time to guide the growth where it needs to go. This picture of a vineyard. Vines would not be harvestable unless there was a structure that supported them, and that's what trellises do. And so we're going to ask the question, how does adopting a gardening mindset and thinking of governance as a trellis transform your business? You see, the business garden metaphor is one that looks at business slightly differently. It doesn't look at a business as something that is built, constructed, engineered. We don't engineer a business as much as think about business in this metaphor as something that is living, that is evolving, that goes through different life stages. We talk about the business life stages, and yet we try to engineer our way through those instead of asking the question, how do we make sense of the growth of a business as we would a living organism? And so what are the plants we're looking after? It's about the people, the teams, the initiative. Each needs care. The teams of people that work in our business. We can't force. If we think about a parent doesn't force their child to grow up. They create an environment within which the child grows. Ultimately, a tree doesn't make an effort to produce fruit. It produces fruit because it's a tree. A vineyard produces grapes because it's a vine, and it's growing in a vineyard. The right environment. Occasional pruning, there are certainly decisions to make about which way to avoid the growth going, but we cultivate the growth by guiding it. You can't force it. You can create conditions for growth. And so thinking about the soil, the water, the sunlight, that metaphor would speak to the culture of the business, the resources we have available. What are we aiming for? What is the intention at the end of the day? And so the leader as a gardener is about cultivating, not commanding. It's enabling people. How do we think about systems instead of forcing or putting straitjackets on people, forcing people to act in a certain way? How do you enable people through the systems and structures? A policy framework that guides as opposed to prevents. Gardeners also think with a longer term in mind. And that's one of the biggest challenges in business today, is this short-term view, this cut and paste view to business to say, well, we'll just take something from somewhere else and put it here and make it work. That's not how gardening works. We've got to plan ahead. We've got to lay out the garden, plant the seeds, wait for them to grow. Certainly we can plant small plants in a garden and cultivate their growth, but it's about anticipating what we want and then guiding, structuring the garden to ultimately grow towards that end. And so there will be obstacles. We need to weed certain things out. The wrong thing may grow. We need to provide nutrients. We need to provide the right levels of growth, training and support for the team as it goes. And so the trellis itself gives plants something to climb on. In business, governance structures and processes are your trellis, and that's why they do need to change over time. As vines grow, so the trellis is built around them so that they grow up and it supports it appropriately. At certain points, there's more effort in terms of the trellis. Once the plant stands on its own, often we can ease back on some of those structures and remove certain structures that may have been there to support in the beginning, but are no longer needed. Some of the examples, our organizational charts, it's the simplest way of viewing a business. When we look at businesses to assess how they're doing, who reports to who sits in what position, an organizational chart is incredibly helpful to do that. Meeting cadences, how often are we meeting? What are we meeting about? Who can make the right decisions at the different levels in the business, in the shareholder organizing system? What decisions can, should, are healthy for shareholders to make? What decisions sit with the board? What decisions sit with management? And how are those linked to the achievement of the strategy or the vision at the end of the day? And so the trellis, as we've said, guides growth, doesn't force growth. It helps shape the plant. And we're not talking about a forest that grows randomly. We're talking about an agricultural scenario or context. We're talking about a farm. A farm is designed and laid out in order to grow properly, so that there's not a wild, uncontrolled growth. The plants don't collapse under their own weight. Ultimately, a farm works because the plants, the harvest, is harvestable at the end of the day. And so it is balancing freedom and support. If we have too rigid a trellis, the plant can't grow naturally. I remember seeing a tree that I planted, attached a structure to enable it to grow in its first few years, and had forgotten to remove the tie to the support. And so the tree started to grow in the wrong direction. And we've all seen that. These trees that are strangely structured or strangely grown because their structures were not adapted as they moved forward. An overly bureaucratic structure stifles growth of the plant. But if there's no trellis at all, growth is unruly, prone to fall apart, chaotic in its organization as well. And so the point of adaptive governance is to devise and develop the appropriate trellis for what growth is being needed. And so the life stage of a business determines different things or requires different things. We need to revise roles. Things need to be given away. Decisions need to be distributed. Processes need to be changed. Governance is not a static thing. It's something that has to be dynamic over time. See, gardeners prune to encourage healthier growth. We cut back certain things not to destroy the plant, but to promote the right kind of growth. Those of you who've pruned roses will know that if you just let the rose grow, you won't get the flowers. Why? Because you want the flowers to draw the nutrients into them as at the right season. If you don't cut back the woody growth and the leafy growth, then you won't get flowers. And same thing with fruit. Sometimes you need to cut back some of the growth. Sometimes you need to leave that to support the next level of growth as well. So thinking about processes, projects, what is draining our resources? And then weeds in a business. Obviously toxic behaviors, legacy practices that no longer serve the business, and they drain resources as well. What governance does is it helps us review and look at those things and remove them, identify them. It's not destructive. Change should always be recognized as what got us here is really, really valuable, but it's not the thing that's going to get us to the next thing. And so change in business is about a constant process of reimagining, re-envisaging, and restructuring things so that the core goals and values are met. And so it's cultivating as well. One of the key things that exist in a plant that often we ignore is the roots. The roots provide the resilience. The roots provide the depth and the strength. And in a business, these are our core values and purpose are the roots. They are things that need to be deepened. They're things that need to be thought about. They're things that need to be extended. And so we've got to create the environment, the container that allows for the root system to grow. And often what happens is we leave the plant in a container that's too small. And so we expect a big growth, and yet the root system has got nowhere to grow. And so really important that we think about and constantly revisit our why, the purpose of the business. We deepen it. We deepen our roots by thinking through the why. What do we truly believe about this business? What is our ultimate purpose? What is our rationale, our reason for being? Those things anchor the business deeper and deeper as we go. It's not that our values change, but they certainly deepen over time. Without deep roots, the structure, the system, what we're cultivating will topple over. They work together to sustain growth. And so as we think about our businesses, maybe an opportunity to step back, do a garden audit of your business. The soil, the plants and the trellis, the soil or the roots, is our culture, purpose, is it fertile? Does our team have the right moral and morale? Is there a clarity of mission? The plants or the stem or the trunk, are our people and projects healthy? Are we appropriately measuring the right things? Are we looking for the right points of growth in our plants, in the business as it grows? And do we have the right structures? Are there clear roles, efficient processes, the trellis that supports it as well? And as you do that audit, identify one action or area to better cultivate your business garden. And then if we reflect on some of the themes covered in this podcast, how would you describe your current leadership style? Are you acting more as a gardener or like a taskmaster? Are you trying to pull the growth from your business, or are you putting the structures in place and working on the container of the business as the governor to enable the right things to grow over time? Does your business have a trellis, and an appropriate trellis, a trellis that is appropriate to the life stage, the sector, the stage of the business, the people in the business? Where do you feel support is lacking or that growth is unguided? Those are really important questions. Looking for the gaps in the trellis, looking for the areas where the plant is outgrown or the trellis has simply been put in place too early. And so the plant can't grow effectively, the business can't grow as it needs to. What's one gardening action? This is a reflection to do with your team as well, that you can take this month. Is there a team member that needs a bit of support? Is there a part of the business that is a bottleneck, a capacity constraint, that is not able to grow because it's too constrained? You haven't expanded the space that it needs to grow in. Are there areas where you're expecting too much and you actually need to put an interim structure in place? Do you need to refine it? Do you need to go back to your vision as part of revisiting the purpose and the deep roots or values in the business? And so if you think about what to do next, take some time to think about your business as a garden. Get the right team. Family businesses, get the right people into the room. What needs staking or support? Where do we need structures that we haven't thought about? Why? Because what's got us here has been great, but it's not going to get us further. What needs pruning? What should we stop or simplify? Are there weeds growing in the garden as well that we need to take out, that we need to remove, toxic elements that are challenging? And then write down 2 or 3 of those actions and commit to them. So that business as a garden audit is important. Also, what can we provide? Download our Cultivation in Your Business toolkit for practical tips on culture and cultivating culture and structure, deepening the roots, enhancing the practices or the processes in the business. And consider signing up for the Flourishing Board Program, a longer term program designed to help you work through all of the different elements of governance and governing, from the boardroom, foresight, oversight, hindsight. Learn how to perfect the trellis for your business, as well as match the trellis to what your business needs at the right time and at this time. Step back. Think of your business as a garden going forward.